Beauty After Death, a story by Pama's Tales. The entire village square fell silent. Even the birds seemed to pause their songs. For Adewale, who had awakened from the jaws of death, stood before the people of Agunle with tears in his eyes. Listen to me, people of Agunle. Whoever finds the maiden who brought me the flower of reflections, whoever finds the brave soul who journeyed into the forbidden forest and snatched my life back from death, shall be richly rewarded. His voice trembled, not from weakness, but from gratitude. I wish to see her. I wish to thank her. I do not care if she is beautiful. I do not care if she is ugly. I do not care if she is rich. I do not care if she is poor. I only wish to look into the eyes of the maiden whose heart was purer than moonlight. Unveil yourself, courageous maiden. Come before me. For the one who walks into darkness to save another carries a beauty that no mirror can ever reflect. Little did Adewale know, the maiden he sought with all his heart was closer than he could ever imagine. Hidden among silent graves, sleeping beneath the watchful eyes of forgotten kings, the maiden the 7 villages would soon come to fear, love, and whisper about, the beautiful cemetery girl. Meanwhile, in Olanma's house, morning arrived. But it was not the kind of morning that carried laughter. It was not the kind of morning that welcomed dancing birds. No. It was the kind of morning that arrives quietly to collect a debt long overdue. Inside Olanma's hut, the old woman lay peacefully upon her raffia mat, her eyes gently closed, her wrinkled hands folded across her chest as though she had merely fallen asleep. At first, no one noticed. The household was too busy. Some mourned the burning farms, others ran toward the cattle fields. Some searched frantically for missing gold, and others simply shouted accusations at one another. Then Olanike's mother remembered. Has that useless girl still not brought grandmother her morning porridge? She marched toward the hut, still angry, still believing Olanike was hiding somewhere. But the moment she entered, she stopped. The bowl slipped from her hands, shattering upon the floor. "Olanma!" she screamed. "Olanma!" She rushed forward, touched the old woman's hand. Cold, motionless, gone. At once, the compound erupted. Women wailed, men lowered their heads, children began crying. For Olanma was not merely wealthy. She was respected, feared, admired, and envied. Yet amidst their tears, another scream pierced the air. One of Olanike's cousins came running, breathing heavily, terrified. The treasury is empty." Everyone turned. "What? Our gold, our silver, our jewelry, it's all gone." Chaos erupted. People rushed toward the storage rooms. Nothing. The chest stood open, empty. Not even a single gold coin remained. Another cousin arrived, covered in soot. "The farms are gone!" Another shouted, "The cattle are dead!" Another cried, "The palm groves are drying." Within moments, the family realized something terrifying. Everything they had boasted about, everything they had inherited, everything they had enjoyed had vanished overnight. And among all the confusion, only one question remained unanswered. Where was Olanike? The same girl they mocked, the same girl they insulted, the same girl they refused to take to Adewale's feast. She was nowhere to be found. Little did they know, the child whose tears built their fortune had finally stopped crying, and destiny had only just begun to repay its debts.
Days passed, yet Olanike remained hidden. Not in a cave, not in the depths of the forest, but in plain sight, like a shadow that everyone sees, yet no one remembers. By day, she wandered quietly through the village paths, listening, watching, learning. She looked like a weary traveler, a maiden carrying too many secrets. And though the villagers walked beside her, bought food beside her, fetched water beside her, none of them knew. None of them recognized her. For who would believe that the breathtaking maiden wandering among them was the same Olanike they had mocked all her life? From whispered conversations, she learned everything. She learned that her grandmother, Olanma, had indeed departed from the land of the living. She learned that her family's wealth had vanished. The gold was gone. The farms were destroyed. The cattle had perished, and the once proud household had become a house of mourning. At first, she wept. Not for the lost riches, but for the old woman who had loved her when no one else did. For the grandmother who spoke in riddles. The grandmother who carried a secret too heavy for old shoulders. The grandmother who died before answering 1,000 questions. And when the day of Olanma's burial arrived, Olanike was there, standing quietly beneath the shade of an ancient tree near the cemetery, watching, silent, hidden. Tears flowed freely down her cheeks. She wanted to run forward. She wanted to throw herself upon the coffin. She wanted to cry out, "Grandmother!" But she remained still, for she feared that if they saw her beauty, they would blame her for everything. And so she mourned alone, just a few steps away from the woman who had loved her more than life itself. Adewale was there too, dressed in white, strong once more, alive, breathing, smiling, the very life she had risked everything to save. He stood only a few steps away from her, close enough to hear her breathe, close enough to feel her sorrow. Yet he never turned around, never noticed her, never imagined that the maiden he searched for day and night, the maiden with the purest heart, the maiden who had walked into darkness to save him, was standing right beside him, dirty, silent, beautiful beyond words, and crying for a grandmother he had never truly known. Sometimes, destiny does not hide people behind mountains. Sometimes, it simply places them before our eyes and waits patiently for us to learn how to see. 3 weeks passed since Olanma was buried beneath the red earth of Agunle. Yet, the mystery remained. Who was the maiden who had braved the forbidden forest? Who had placed the flower of reflections at Adewale's door? Who had rescued him from the jaws of death? Adewale could no longer bear the silence. And so, one morning, accompanied by his father, they journeyed to consult Baba Alagbo, the oldest diviner in the 7 villages. The old man sat beneath an ancient Iroko tree. His white beard touched his chest. Cowries lay scattered before him. Smoke from burning herbs curled around his hut. The old man closed his eyes, cast the cowries, and remained silent for a very long time. Then he smiled, not with joy, but with understanding. The tortoise searches for honey in the forest, yet forgets that the bees followed him home. Adewale looked confused. His father leaned forward. "Baba, speak plainly." The old man laughed softly. "Plain words are for market women. Secrets are clothed in parables." He lifted another cowrie. The flower that restored life was carried by feet familiar to the household that recently buried its oldest tree. The father gasped. "You mean?" The old man nodded. "The dove that carried your healing once ate from Olanma's cooking pot." Silence. And before sunset, Adewale, his father, and Baba Alagbo arrived at Olanma's compound. The family quickly gathered. Though their wealth was gone, their greed had not departed. The old diviner raised his staff. When the river hides a pearl, it does not remain hidden forever. The maiden who saved Adewale drinks from this household. Let her come forth willingly before the next market day. For truth walks slowly, but it always arrives. The family exchanged glances. Excitement returned to their eyes. That evening, after Adewale, his father, and Baba Alagbo had departed from Olanma's compound, the household gathered beneath the old orange tree. For the first time in weeks, hope had returned. Not hope for Olanike, not hope for Olanma, but hope for riches, hope for status, hope for becoming Adewale's wife. Yet, one question troubled them. Where had Olanike gone? For 3 weeks had passed since Olanma's burial, and not a single soul had seen her. Perhaps she ran away because she could not bear losing grandmother. Or perhaps she finally found a pond deep enough to hide her face. The maidens burst into laughter, but Olanike's mother remained thoughtful. Could it be? Could Olanike be the maiden? Suddenly, silence fell. Then, the entire compound erupted in laughter. Olanike, the maiden who saved Adewale, the same Olanike whom children cried upon seeing, the same Olanike who could not even look Adewale in the eye. They laughed until tears gathered in their eyes. Then one cousin spoke. And even if she truly were the maiden, what difference would it make? Adewale would never choose her. He is handsome, he is wealthy, he has his pick of every beautiful maiden in the 7 villages. If Olanike appears, he will surely reject her. And since the bride price belongs to Olanma's household, he will simply choose one of us. The eyes that judge a seed often fail to recognize the tree it will become. And somewhere beyond the village, hidden among ancient graves, the maiden they mocked was listening and smiling for the first time in many years. She possessed something none of them could borrow, a pure heart and the truth. The next market day finally arrived. People traveled from the 7 villages. Chiefs sat beneath royal canopies. Elders took their places. The priestess stood beside Adewale and his father. The village square overflowed with anticipation, for this was the day the mysterious Maiden of Reflections would finally reveal herself.
Standing proudly before the crowd was Chioma, the most beautiful of Olanike's cousins. Her neck glittered with coral beads, her wrists shone with golden bracelets. She smiled with confidence, certain that before sunset, she would become Adewale's bride. The priestess stepped forward. Her sacred staff struck the earth 3 times. Silence fell.
So, you claim to be the maiden who entered the forbidden forest? I am, Chioma replied boldly. The priestess nodded. Then answer me. When you stood before the goddess of reflections, what were the 2 riddles she asked you, and what answers did you give? Chioma's smile faded. Her lips trembled. She searched desperately for words, but none came. The crowd began to murmur.
The first riddle, she whispered. I cannot remember. And the second, asked the priestess. Chioma lowered her head. She had no answer. The chiefs exchanged worried glances. The elders gathered briefly in quiet discussion. When they returned, the priestess raised her voice.
The true maiden walks among us, but she hides herself. If she does not step forward before the shadow reaches the sacred stone, the blessing that restored Adewale shall depart, and his life shall once again stand at the doorway of death. A gasp swept through the crowd. Messengers hurried through every path in Agunle. The news spread from compound to compound until it reached the ancient cemetery. There, among silent graves, Olanike heard the announcement. Fear seized her heart. No, she whispered.
I did not cross the forest to lose him now. Without another thought, she ran, past the ancient tombs, past the marketplace, past the river where she had once cried because she was the ugliest girl in the land. She ran until she reached the village square. Just as the priestess prepared to end the gathering, a voice rang out from the crowd.
Listen to me.
Stop! Every head turned. The drummers fell silent. Even the wind seemed to stand still.
A young maiden stepped forward. Dust covered her feet. A faded wrapper rested upon her shoulders. Her face was hidden beneath a worn scarf. She walked slowly, not with pride, not with fear, only with truth. When she reached the center of the square, she gently removed the scarf from her head. The morning sun touched her face, and the entire village froze. Silence. Complete silence. No one breathed. No one moved.
The chiefs rose from their seats. Women covered their mouths. Children stared with wide eyes. Even the priestess lowered her staff in astonishment. She was breathtaking. Her beauty seemed to shine like the first light after a long season of rain. Then, Olanike's mother took one trembling step backward. Her eyes widened. Her hands began to shake. No, she whispered. It cannot be.
Chioma looked closely at the maiden's face, then at the tiny birthmark upon her wrist, the very mark she had seen since childhood. Olanike, she whispered. The name spread through the crowd like wildfire. Olanike? The ugly girl? Olama's granddaughter? No, impossible. Then an old woman cried aloud. So it was true.
She was never ugly. She carried a curse. Another elder lowered his walking stick. Tears filled his eyes. All these years, we mocked an innocent child. Shame settled upon the village, heavy as stone. The priestess stepped toward the maiden. Her voice was gentle. "Child, what is your name?" The beautiful maiden lifted her head. Tears glistened in her eyes. "Olanike. My name is Olanike, granddaughter of Olanma, the child whose beauty was taken before she could speak, so others could live in abundance. The girl who carried shame, so her family could carry gold. The one who was mocked for a sacrifice she never chose. I entered the forbidden forest, not for wealth, not for honor, but because the man I loved deserved to live." The village square fell silent once again. The priestess smiled. "And tell us, what were the riddles of the goddess?" Without hesitation, Olanike repeated each riddle. "What is the one treasure that grows richer the more it is given away?" The answer is love. For the more love we give, the more love remains within us. "What is lighter than a feather, yet no warrior can hold it forever?" Breath. For every life depends upon it, yet no man, no matter how mighty, can keep it forever. She gave the very answers that had opened the path to the flower of reflections. The priestess closed her eyes, then lifted her staff high. "The ancestors have spoken. This," she declared with joy, "is the true Maiden of Reflections." At that very moment, Adewale stepped forward. His eyes never left Olanike. Tears rolled freely down his face. He stopped before her,
"You are so beautiful.
slowly took both
Please
of her
don't
hands
cry, my love.
and smiled.
Let me..."
"So it was you, the girl everyone rejected, the girl they called ugly, the girl with the purest heart in all the 7 villages." He gently wiped the tears from her
love,
face.
Let me wipe
"Olanike,
these tears of joy.
even
We
if
are
I had
finally
met you
here.
before today, even if the curse had never been broken, even if you still wore the face the world laughed at, I would still have chosen you. For beauty may capture a man's eyes, but only a pure heart can capture his soul." Unable to hold back her tears, Olanike embraced him. They both wept, not because the curse had ended, but because truth had finally been seen. As for Olanike's family, not one of them could lift their heads. Their pride had turned into shame, for they finally understood that every field they harvested, every piece of gold they spent, every feast they celebrated, had been bought with the tears of the child they despised. The eldest chief rose to his feet. His voice echoed across the square. "A family that feasts while one of its own starves in sorrow has forgotten the ways of our ancestors. You shall leave this village until your hearts learn the compassion your wealth never taught you." And so Olanike's cruel relatives were banished, not because they became poor, but because they had mocked the very sacrifice that made them rich. Months later, beneath the same great orange tree where Olanike had once been ridiculed, Adewale and Olanike were joined in marriage. The 7 villages gathered once more, not to mock her, but to honor her. And whenever children laughed at those who looked different, the elders would tell the story of Olanike, The maiden whose beauty was hidden by sacrifice. The girl who lost everything, yet gained a love that saw beyond appearances.